All right, well, since we've got most of our panel in and we're waiting for people to still arrive, I'm going to go ahead and take a moment and introduce our room and introduce myself. I'm Julie, host for this room and club. As we get started, we are continuing to ping folks into the room, so use that little plus sign at the bottom. You can narrow your search by using the search bar with keywords, especially if you have a lot of followers. Be sure to follow me, all our moderators and panelists here today. Be sure to check out and follow others in the room. Just note that closed caption is now part of Clubhouse, so it should scroll at the bottom of your screen for those who use closed captions. We do encourage anyone in the audience to raise their digital hand. We'll do our very best to get to everyone. And please note, our club is called Consuli Conversations. In addition to this room, we also host a long COVID, Patients Meet Researchers room, and a clinical trials room. You can learn more by following our club, Consuli Conversations. Tap the little greenhouse at the top, give us a follow, check out the profile to see what's coming up in the next few months. For any direct questions, comments, feedback, suggestions to join our panel in the future, to recommend someone for any future panels, you can send me a direct email. You'll find that and our socials in my bio. I always love hearing from you guys. Feel free to back channel as well if that's preferred on this platform. And give us a follow on our social medias. That handle can be found in my bio as well, or at Consuli_Inc. And for those that don't yet know Consuli, broadly, Consuli is a public benefit company with the mission to enable individuals to participate in the data economy. Experts do suggest our individual data is worth about $20,000 per year. So we help people choose who gets access to and how their personal information is used, and if and when desired, get them paid for their data and make medicine better. We do this by operating a marketplace for members where we become their agent, and our members receive smart-matched, individualized offers from us for opportunities, including to participate in clinical trials and data trials. There's no cost to join our movement. You can learn more at consuli.net. That's CONSULI.net. It is now my pleasure to turn the floor over to our room moderator, Elizabeth Dreicer, who is a philanthropist, activist, and co-founder and CEO of Consuli. Elizabeth will be introducing our distinguished panelists and guests. Elizabeth, now over to you.
Thank you so much, Julie, and thanks to Julie and Spencer for all their help in making this event possible. And welcome. We're happy to be able to host and facilitate this room. And just as a reminder, we also host a public virtual whiteboard that you can see in the link. I'm not sure if Julie, you'll put the link up here shortly, but just a reminder that this is open for folks to both take a look at what we've discussed previously as well as contribute. So you'll see that it's quite an ethnographic array of information that has been discussed over the course of time. All right, so now it is my pleasure to introduce other members and our fabulous guest panelists. First up, Spencer Gurley. Spencer is a recent computer science graduate from the University of California, Santa Cruz, with a focus on unethical algorithms, fairness, and bias within machine learning and artificial intelligence and social implications of tech. As an undergrad, he was instrumental in the creation of the Center for Applied Values and Ethics and Advancing Technologies, as well as establishing a curriculum for the course, Ethics and Algorithms. Spencer is a member of our team and in partnership with others is helping us stand up the Data Dignity Alliance. I'm turning the mic to Spencer for his opening remarks. This is Elizabeth and I'm done speaking.
Hey everyone, so great to be here. I can't believe it's already been 13, I believe, Data Dignity clubhouses that we've ran, so really excited to see how it's progressing and what ideas are going to be coming up this time. I'm super excited for this conversation just because I think, similar to data dignity as a whole, it's so multi-fielded. There's so many different perspectives that need to be represented and talked about. And I think that's why this panel, this conversation is going to be so powerful, because I really do feel like we have people from all sorts of different areas, different perspective, different fields, different specialties talking about this topic. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation. This is Spencer, and I'm done speaking.
Thanks so much, Spencer. And next up, we have Pati Ruiz. Pati is an emerging technology scholar on the Learning Sciences research team at Digital Promise and a former K through 12 technology leader and teacher coach. Her research interests include AI ethics, AI literacy, web accessibility, design justice, culturally sustaining, and the use of emerging technologies for learning and equitable access in computing education. Okay, Pati, I'm turning the mic over to you for your opening remarks.
Hi, everyone. I'm brand new to Clubhouse, but happy to be here and happy to be joining you.
Pati, I think I see that I don't think we're hearing you. I see your, I see that you're trying to talk, but we're not getting sound. At least I'm not hearing sound. Is anybody else hearing sound?
I could hear her.
You
I
could.
can hear her. Yeah.
You could.
Yeah.
Okay, so then perhaps this is my problem. Okay, Pati, go ahead. I'm going to jump out and come back.
No problem. I definitely thought I was doing something wrong. I'm glad everyone can hear me. I'm happy to be here. Like you just mentioned in my intro, I'm focused on emerging technologies and education. I currently work for a nonprofit called Digital Promise, and we work with school districts across the country. Mostly in the US, we're doing a little bit of international work.
Now the sound did cut out. Sorry, I don't know if it did for anybody else.
I'm still hearing you, Pati.
Yeah, I couldn't hear you either.
You know, one of the tips that we have when you're on here is sometimes if you leave the room and come back in, it might, better your connection. So, Pati, I'm not sure if you want to do that. Oh, I guess she just did. And Elizabeth is back. I'll give it back to you, Elizabeth.
No worries. Thank you so much, Christine. That's what I did too. I just left and came back. It's sort of like the reboot fix. Hi, Pati. Turning it back to you.
Okay, hopefully this is better for everyone. But yeah, I'm happy to be here. I work with school districts mostly right now, with technology leaders and superintendents on rolling out computer science education in schools. So happy to be here and learn from everyone.
Pati, glad to have you. Thank you so much. All right, so next up we have Alice Rathjen. Alice is one of the early pioneers of computational biology and spatial analysis of genomes. She's been a serial entrepreneur in genomics for nearly 2 decades, having launched Dominga, the first direct-to-consumer genetic testing service in 2000, and DNA Guide, the first genome browser for mobile platforms in 2009. She previously won the Kauffman Award for Women in Science and Engineering. Alice brings to DNA Compass her passion for patient-centric data and building federated genomics infrastructure for delivering consented genomes at scale. Alice, I'm turning it over to you for your opening remarks.
Oh, thank you. And we'll get you to shorten my intro just moving forward. No need to go over my long list of failures. But I'm excited to be here. For me, I see this dignity of data, huge issue, and trying to figure out a path in the future where these machine learning and AI algorithms are dependent upon human consent, and people can sever their ties to the algorithms that aren't consistent with the values of our democratic society. And I'm done speaking.
Thanks so much, Alice. I know we'll be talking more about all of that. And next up, we have Linda McDonald Glenn. Linda is the founding director of the Center for Applied Values and Ethics and Advanced Technologies at Crown College at the University of California, Santa Cruz. She is also a recovering attorney and ethicist, futurist, educator, and advisor with over three decades of experience in a variety of sectors, including exponential technology, healthcare, government, education, business ethics, and futures forecasting. So, Linda, the mic is yours for your opening remarks.
Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. It's such a pleasure to be part of this group. I've been working with you for how many now? I can't remember, but I I was thinking about the whole concept of data dignity, and it's interesting because data equity is one thing, but data equity does not equal data dignity. Data dignity is about getting the power back into the hands of the creator of the data. And that is not something that I'm, there is a movement to do that now, but I think it needs to be expanded. And I'm looking forward to speaking with to hearing all about that and speaking with everyone about that. And I invite people to connect so that we can continue the conversation. This is Linda MacDonald Glenn, and I'm done speaking. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Linda. Next up, we have Vinay Narayan. Hopefully I got that name right. Vinay is a senior research associate at Apti Institute. A lawyer by training, Vinay is interested in models that allow people and communities to exercise better control over their data. At Apti, Vinay is looking at various models of data stewardship that enable this, with a special focus on agriculture and climate-focused data stewards. I'm turning the mic to Vinay for his opening remarks. This is Elizabeth, and I'm done speaking for now.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Hi, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here again. Like Elizabeth mentioned, I work at Apti Institute in India, and we are really interested in various models of data stewardship. As we know, there is no one-size-fits-all approach, and so we're really interested in looking at what works in what context, and I'm eager to learn from everyone here. I'm done speaking. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vinay. Glad to have you with us. Okay, and I'm just looking. I think we have a few panelists that are still not here, so I'll move to the next one. I think next up, I'll introduce Christine von Raesfeld. She is the founder and CEO of People with Empathy. Christine is a leader in bringing a critically needed patient perspective to cutting-edge medical innovations. She's committed to providing patients with chronic and rare diseases with the support they need. She works with patient advocacy organizations, industry representatives, and individual patients and their loved ones. Living with many rare and chronic diseases herself, she believes that the only way to ensure health equity is to leverage one's own data. I'm turning it over to Christine for her opening remarks. Christine, the mic is yours.
Okay, I'm here, and hopefully I'm not too out of breath. I am at Scope right now, so if anyone is listening in from Scope, come find me and I'll talk to you. I'm Christine. This is one of the topics that is near and dear to my heart. And, as a patient living on Social Security disability in Silicon Valley, I find and I see that there's ways that we can really, even this playing field and really make people who have conditions valuable like they are. So I don't know. I'll stop now and I'll let you guys continue, but go ahead, Elizabeth.
Thanks so much,
Thanks so
Christine.
much, Christine.
Oh, sorry. Am I echoing?
No, you were good.
Okay. Okay, great. I was echoing to myself, but it seems to have fixed itself. Okay, thank you so much. And Christine, really appreciate your perspective. Next up, I'd like to introduce Gavin Campbell. Gavin is a futurologist specializing in systems and emergence. He is working with a project called Super Reality, an open source XR education platform. Gavin, I'm turning the mic over to you for your opening remarks. This is Elizabeth, and I'm done speaking for now.
Hey, Elizabeth. Happy to be here. Yeah, I'm recognizing I'm in a room full of people who are totally brilliant and can articulate, all of this so well. So I think I'm here to, network with people and, just like Linda was describing earlier, the more we communicate with one another, the more we're going to be able to actualize this potential. And so, really happy to be here and just want to listen and maybe contribute.
Thanks so much, Gavin. I appreciate that, and appreciate you being with us. Next up, Matt Prewitt. Matt is president of RadicalxChange Foundation. He is also a lawyer, programmer, writer, and research partner at Amentum. Hopefully I said that right. He's focused on developing systems of governance that work better than capitalism. Matt, I'm turning the mic over to you for your opening remarks. This is Elizabeth, and I'm done speaking for now.
Thanks. Happy to be here. I think that a quick summary of sort of what I'm up to at RadicalxChange Foundation is basically we look at better ways of sort of innovating in democracy, coming up with better ways of taking collective decisions, and also innovating in sort of forms of ownership. So we're interested in better systems of shared ownership and partial common ownership, and that project of sort of uh, um, uh, giving larger groups of people shared control over assets depends on the project of getting better at doing democracy. So that at a very kind of abstract level, that's what we're doing. We're trying to help people get better at taking collective decisions and then kind of turning that back around into better systems of economic organization. And this relates to data. I mean, a lot of the work that we've done in the past couple of years has related to data, because data is one of these things, as we all know, whose value comes from network effects, and it's sort of this collectively created thing. And in order to kind of properly acknowledge that and to properly respect the many people whose lives and work contributes to the value of data, we need to get better at democracy. We need to get better at we need to come up with essentially better systems of stewardship and shared ownership over this stuff. So yeah, that's it. Happy to be here.
Thanks so much, Matt. And I want to also ask Parker Parker, apologies, I don't seem to have your intro, but if you would be kind enough. Oh, sorry. I think yeah, you're here. Okay, great. Parker, would love to just ask you to give some opening, share your bio and your opening remarks. Really glad to have you on the panel.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Parker Nolan. I am an ethicist and the founder of 10.3 Research Solutions, based here in the in the Northern Virginia area. And I'm very excited to be part of this group and talk about data dignity and how we can actually use our data and keep it in the ethical realm for everybody. So thank you, Elizabeth, and I'm done for speaking for now.
Thanks so much, Parker. Really glad to have you. Okay, so we're going to kick off the question of, and I know we've talked about this before, but really, what are the most pressing needs at this time from each of your perches? Where are we, making progress? Where are we derailed? And what's next? So I know I've thrown a few things in the field here, but really just to get this to be practical and real. Love to have everybody weigh in, and I'm just going to go around as I see you on my screen, and just call on you if okay, and we'll go around the room with our our panelists. Also, a reminder to our guests, if you have questions, please raise your digital hand. We'll get to you and add you to the stage. Vinay, I'm going to first ask you. The mic is yours.
Thanks, Elizabeth. And this is something I think we spoke about, or rather I spoke about in the previous meeting we had as well. And one thing that we think is really, really important is to try and figure out, what works in different contexts. So, for example, we've been looking at, in a recent project, the feasibility of a concept called data trusts, and or rather, very specifically, bottom-up data trusts. But what we're beginning to understand is that they don't necessarily work in a global south context, for example, because they rely heavily on the people who are forming the data trust having some level of digital and data literacy, which is quite absent in most global south contexts. So I think a very key element is to, when we're looking at how we can build data dignity for everyone and how we can help people have control and access to their own data, it's important to understand the various contexts we're working in and the various constraints that come within those contexts. And so that's really something that we feel is quite important. I think that's about it from me for now, and I'm happy to hear what the others have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Vinay, in addition to context, which I appreciate you bringing that perspective, very important, just from your perch and from what you're seeing, where do you think we're making progress and where are we derailed right now?
I think, having said what I said, I feel like within at least the very specific community of data stewardship, a lot more people are waking up to the notion of needing different models for different contexts, and so I think we're seeing a lot more efforts around things like data cooperatives and data unions. We've seen some models work really well across both the global north and the global south. And these take on slightly different forms in the global south, where it's more, I would say, you have people who are genuinely committed to the cause of getting data dignity, not just for themselves, but for other people or other communities. And so it's it's a lot of participation from civil society organizations that really pushing, the needle across is what I would say. Whereas I think in the global north, it's slightly easier to make people themselves be involved, or other people who belong to those communities be involved. And I think that's an area where we've seen real progress over the last few years. And in terms of what can be done more, I think really it's about awareness and education. I think that's a very important starting point. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Vinay. I appreciate that. Okay, next up, I'd love to pass the mic to you, Linda. What are our most pressing needs? Where are we making progress and where are we derailed? Linda.
Sorry,
No
yeah,
worries.
sorry about that. That's what I was trying to find the unmute button. Well, listen, I think that this issue is part of a larger issue that, and I've said this before, and as you and I have talked about before, Elizabeth, this is an equity issue. It is about returning, it is about giving consumers and data creators the power to have control and allowing their data to be used in a way that is beneficial for themselves, but also for in general, because right now, the way that our data is being collected without consent, the way that it is used, the way that it is being gathered and used, it exacerbates the huge equity gaps globally, and it's part of a larger movement, I think, to say, how do we create a regenerative economy? How do we create an economy that works for everyone else? And since data is a key part of the economy, I think where we're where we're falling behind is just getting the message out. I mean, we have Clubhouse. I know that there's others, but I think that it's important to spread the word. I was just reading up on the World Economic Forum. They recognize this as a big issue too, as a huge issue, and they have some specific recommendations, which actually, to be truthful, I haven't had a chance to look at, so I need to incorporate that. But I think that answers your question. So how do we do that? I'd love to hear from all the other panelists. How do we continue? How do we make the conversation mainstream? But this is Linda, and I'm done speaking.
Thanks so much, Linda. Appreciate that. Matt, I'm going to pass the mic to you as well. You know, most pressing needs from your perspective. Where are we making progress? Where are we derailed? The mic is yours.
Thanks. There's a couple of ways of framing that or of answering that question, I guess. I mean, one way of thinking about it is, I think that there are policy areas in which where we sort of need a little help, which is a little bit derailed. I think there are also kind of certain ways in which the effort to get bottom up organization of data cooperatives and coalitions and unions is moving slower than I would like to see. But in lieu of focusing on those framings, I mean, I think one way that I feel the conversation is I feel we're a bit derailed is just in the public conversation. It specifically, like, what one thing that often kind of frustrates me is that I feel there's too much conversation around kind of individual empowerment, and specifically around this kind of idea of individual empowerment and individual consent. The reason I feel and I sympathize with the aims of everyone who sort of talks about that, but I think that framing gets us off track a lot, because what we really need is organization. What we really need, the important thing to understand is basically that if every single individual is trying to kind of control their own data through complex consent and complex expression of preferences, and so it'll never go anywhere. Like, basically the way that we're disempowered in the current data economy is by being sort of divided and conquered. In other words, like, we have a handful of companies that have negotiated terms of service on an individualized basis with billions of people. And it's that, like, one-to-many dividing and conquering that has got us into the problem in the first place. What we need is, like, organization on the other side of the equation to rebalance power. So, and I think it's important to understand that. I think it's important for everyone to sort of see that, and for the, I'm hopeful that a lot of the people, again, whose goals I agree with, who are talking about consent and individual empowerment, will take on board that reframing a little bit, because I think that's what we really need. We need sort of massive organization on the consumer side, on the user side, on the side of people, as against the more concentrated interests that exploit data.
Elizabeth, if I may, sorry, I need to leave early because I need to go teach class. But Matt, I'm in total agreement with what you said. We need to look at implementing policies, and it's partly, I think that there's merit to having the individual empowerment, because we can see that it works sometimes, that in say healthcare advocacy or sectors like that. So, but yes, policy is what we need, and getting it into the forefront. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Linda. Appreciate you being with us. Matt, thanks so much for your comments. I'd like to turn the mic to Pati. Same question. What do you perceive as our most pressing needs? Where are we making progress, and where are we derailed?
I, in the education space, am seeing some progress in the research space when it comes to funding and to kind of centering the voices of researchers who have been doing this work for a while. Specifically, Dr. Timmy Gebru recently starting her own institute for the Distributed AI Research Institute. And really focusing on these issues. Dr. Joy Bulamwini, who recently, just yesterday, lobbied the IRS to stop using facial recognition and biometric technology for identification. And then another one is Dr. Sophia Noble, who recently was recognized as a MacArthur Genius for her work on algorithms that reinforce racism and other systemic issues. But so I'm seeing progress in funding of researchers who are doing good work in the space. But when it comes to where we're derailed, I agree 100% with Linda. This is an issue of systemic oppression, and in education, what I'm seeing when I'm working with the technology leaders at districts is that there needs to be a lot more support for those who are working with students and their families, and large amounts of data that are being collected. We have vendors going into school districts and promising free technology. And many times superintendents aren't aware or aren't reading the fine print and realizing that this comes with the caveat that all the data that's being collected will go to these companies. And there are some real issues there. And we need to do more work around data literacy, also awareness of what these emerging technologies mean, what's being collected, because schools and vendors to schools do have like privacy laws that they need to be mindful of, but I don't know how that's being enforced or whether that's being enforced in many cases, and that's just in the US. Internationally, we're seeing issues around the collection of lots of data for the sake of education that's not necessarily data solely for education, and we don't know what some of these ed tech companies are doing with the data that's collected. So more awareness, more transparency, I think needs to be central in the education space. And this is Pati Ruiz. I'm done speaking.
Thank you so much, Pati. Okay, lots there. Parker, what do you perceive are our most pressing needs from your perch? Where are we making progress? Where are we derailed? The mic's yours.
Oh, thank you, Elizabeth. Well, I think the most pressing need is something that folks have already touched on. We need some policy and some regulatory framework around how our data is going to be used and how it cannot be used. For example, plain language terms of service and end user license agreements for software, talking about how that data is going to be harvested. Where we're making progress, I think, is Senator Gillibrand's Data Protection Act, which is very helpful, but it's being stalled in Congress right now, which is, of course, one of the areas where we're kind of getting derailed. But another area I think we're getting derailed in is educating people about what their data truly is and what it really what it represents to third parties. I think that's going to be crucial in making progress in this area. And that's all I have to say. I'm done speaking now.
Thanks so much, Parker. Okay, Christine, same question. Most pressing needs, where are we making progress? Where are we derailed? The mic's yours.
Okay, sure. So my pressing needs, I'd say education, legislation, and collaborations. The things that I think we're making progress on are the slow conversations, very slow conversations, and some of the legislation. I'm seeing a lot of people stepping in. Anna Eshoo in California is looking at, laws around clinical trials and the data collected there as well. But I think we are definitely lacking on the education part, especially with the general public. I have conversations all the time around data, and people don't know what it is. They don't grasp the concept. It's not something tangible. And so they just don't understand. And even, I'm here at Scope, and we're talking about how patients have these certain viewpoints, but just this last week, I got my first hate mail from another patient, and really because I was, talking about vaccines. And I think, it's just that trust within communities that we need to work on and build. It's the idea of the collaboration and knowing that for those of you who deal, or those of us who deal with rare disease or any type of disease, it's not only our information alone that's going to get us to the solutions. It's combining that data from multiple people and being able to openly share that in a way that's going to truly benefit ourselves and also those around us. So I don't know. I think it's a long fight. I think we are totally derailed on the conversations. I step into conversations where data has already been discussed before they've even brought anybody in. And so those are the types of things that I think need to change as well, is when you talk about data, when you're talking about patients, those things need to be discussed with patients and not in the boardroom with a certain few people who are going to make that determination or decision for everybody. So again, education, that collaborative, that collective, and really just getting people to realize what data means. I mean, we're in this new digital age. We have a new data economy coming. And I've talked to economists at Stanford and everywhere, where this is our chance to even the playing field and to really give those populations who are underserved and underrepresented a voice. And so that's Christine and my perspective.
Thanks so much, Christine. Okay, so next up, Alice, same question. Most pressing needs, where are we making progress? Where are we derailed? The mic is yours.
Well, I'm hopelessly optimistic. I think that, especially outside the United States and even within the US, there's this growing awareness of and they call it different things, Web 3.0 or federated data. But that notion that we want the data more distributed, and for the benefits of the data to be more widely distributed. So I think we're right on track for these things. And in terms of where we're, ironically, it's government subsidy of efforts that monetize de-identified data that I think are our biggest hurdle at this point. So I'm hoping that, imagine if they said you can't do an initiative if the data is being monetized in the background without going back and doing patient engagement or consent of that data, that written consent was not valid if you want more funding. So simply we're just requiring a move from written to dynamic consent as a requirement for receiving additional government subsidy of data collection efforts would go a long way. And that's Alice. I'm done speaking.
Thanks, Alice. Appreciate that perspective. Okay, next up, Gavin, same question. Most pressing needs, where are we making progress? Where are we derailed? The mic is yours.
Yeah, I wanted to actually just agree with Alice's perspective there. It seems like we well, one, I'm really optimistic about this, and yes, we're basically right where we need to be. It's that you know, we're as this group, I kind of view us as exploring this space, that we're in this initial wave of emergence and novelty, and that as this information becomes more and more accessible, ubiquitous, open source, etc., that we'll just see people understand because it just makes sense. And so we'll just have to just give it some time. And I think we'll watch this all hopefully come to fruition more and more as our education becomes more robust. Um, and yeah, I think maybe looking at the data space as a commons, a global commons, um, could be a useful frame to me, and where we can say, this is all of our job, and framing that for other people as, this isn't just about you, it's not just about me, it's literally all of our responsibilities to get this for humanity. Because I think this really requires an upgrade in, what does it mean to be a human on planet Earth, and it's not quite like history. This is actually something unique. So thank you.
Thanks, Gavin. Appreciate your perspective. Okay, so next up, David, glad you could join us. Would love to have you do your introduction as well, and then also tackle the most pressing needs, where we're making progress and where you perceive we're derailed. The mic is yours.
Well, thank you. I'm kind of like a refugee from the other Consuli discussion group where I participate in regularly, and thought I would try this one out. So I was going to just be an observer today, but so many of the things that people were saying really resonated with what I'm doing right now. I've I'm a senior person, past clinical practice, but still doing research, mostly on research methodology in areas where standard pharmaceutical drug development methodology either doesn't work or there are regulatory and federal barriers to it working. I've been organizing for 12 years a community-based and patient-centered clinical cannabis evaluation and research network, and we have been wandering in the wilderness for a long time, and then just all of a sudden recently we connected with the Integrated Providers Association that had the same goals as we did, and so we've now become a part of them, and we're being implemented nationwide very shortly. We'll be announcing next month our initial data collection. And it's all longitudinal observational research collected by both clinicians who are trained to be investigators. And so they contribute and own their own data, and patients who are being seen by those doctors who agree to donate their data and their subjective observation of their responsiveness to different therapies, particularly plant-based therapies. And all of that gets anonymized and put into a longitudinal time series database, which then can be analyzed. Our primary goal is to validate the use of cannabinoids and other plant medicines for chronic pain, addiction, PTSD, and depression, because we feel that that's the easiest path to harm reduction therapies to control the opioid and other drug overdose epidemics and the intersecting epidemics of mass incarceration that are occurring in this country. But I have to say, everybody's right about the things and the steps forward in education and data handling, et cetera, that are needed. But in some ways, the more I get into this and the more I work with an organization like the APA, the more I feel like we're kind of, in this environment where our healthcare system has been shown to be so ineffective cost-wise, so inequitable, and so burning out of the people who are trying to provide care, that we're kind of arranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, and we really have to look at transforming our healthcare system from one that is disease-based into one that's wellness and prevention-based, and regain the trust of patients that doctors, nurses, drug companies, etc., and even the government are not just trying to capitalize on their illness, but are trying to help them and prevent them from and maintain their health. So I'm David, and that's my introduction.
Thanks, David. I appreciate that perspective. So we've sort of, the purpose of that was to just sort of open up the dialogue here to the issues. And, we've heard lots of pieces. I want to try and pull the thread on an important piece. And, Matt raised the issue of the divide and conquer that is currently, sort of in this disempowering state of the one-to-many. Meaning big entities doing singular consents, and even if we get plain language, as Parker was articulating, my question to the panel is, is it even feasible for individuals to operate on their own in this ecosystem as it relates to data? And sort of setting aside the many good things that come from learning, and and I think even David, in some ways, you're bringing the contrast of, hey, there's good stuff we're learning as a result of de-identified data, and patients are consenting to give the information, but the value of that is still, shall we say, it's still not, we're still not bringing that back to the value to the individual. So the question is, like, how do we resolve this conundrum, right, in a practical way? And I'm gonna, I'd like to, Matt, I see you came off mute. This is how we're gonna do the next part. As you have something to say, take yourself off mute. I'll watch carefully, and we'll do that. So Matt, then Christine. Matt, the mic's yours.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think that's I love that framing, and I'd also want to hear what the other panelists have to say about it. But just to sort of expand that framing, or expand the question you asked, which is, how do we get individuals, in a better position? So, all right. So quickly, I mean, my answer to your question, can individuals operate in this environment, is basically no. I think it's kind of it, and it's sort of similar in my mind to if you think about, could people operate as individuals when they were like coal miners in West Virginia in 1910, right? No, they couldn't. They needed to collectivize their power in some way. I think we're in a similar position now in terms of like individuals trying to get their data dignified and respected. And but one thing I wanted to add is that I think it's really important to see that there are two ways that to remediate this, right? One way that individuals sometimes strengthen their hand in these kinds of situations where individual action just isn't really ever going to work is through regulation, is by getting the state to help them. So extending the coal miner metaphor, it's that would be labor regulation, and then the other way that individuals strengthen themselves is by organizing themselves. So extending the metaphor, unions. So in other words, individuals can get together and organize to strengthen themselves, or they can get help from the state. Those are both ways that so in other words, there's like two big categories of tools here for how individuals can get out of their untenable position. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Thanks so much, Matt. And Christine, I'm going to turn the mic to you.
Yeah, I'm going to say, Matt, I agree 100% with you. I don't think that an individual can control that. I do think it needs to be put into the hands of trusted groups. As in healthcare, I think it needs to be trusted advocacy organizations who can really tell the patients the value of that data and show the benefits for the community. But again, I don't think you can do this on your own, right? There's specialties in every field. We call tax attorneys to do our taxes. We call other people to do other things. you cannot do this on your own and not in the state that things are now. So I would say, I would agree with you. It has to be some kind of government program or some, and you see it now, right? Patients and people organizing themselves, finding, researchers to work with them. So we're on a changing space. And I think it's really important right now for people individually to realize, that individual data, yes, it's very important, but it's so much more important for the collective. And I think running it as a collective is also what it needs to be done, because you don't have those individual needs there that are taking precedence over a community. And so I think there's a lot that needs to go into this. I think we do need to reorganize in healthcare, at least the patient advocacy groups, to really have a focus and to really be there for the communities and not work solely individually like a lot of them do now. But I could go on and on. You all know that, but I'm going to yield my time and just tell you that's all my perspective for now.
Thanks, Christine. Appreciate that. Gavin, I thought I saw you come off mute. I don't know if you were clapping with your mic or actually wanted to add to the conversation on this front.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe a small piece. I liked Matt's analogy to the miner, and to me the same thing was like, can you exist in a bubble? And it's like if you look at it in the sense of like how ecosystems work, like there is no separation between you and like the exterior, in that like we all work together, and that it wouldn't be, it's not really fun to even if you could operate individually and get your data, it's the fact that you're going to watch the whole, the people around you not be empowered, right? This data is the means by which we become more, able to express ourselves, intelligent, wise, and what better world to live in than people who are more empowered to be able to interact with, and in that, just in that lens alone, it's like that's a better world for us to live in. So like, I have an incentive to actually see people get this capacity more and more. So that's the way I look at it. Thanks.
Elizabeth,
Thanks so
can
much.
I step in for
Yes,
1 second? And I just want to
of course.
just say a quick example that I tell people a lot of times on the collective intelligence side of it is I like to think of a pencil, right? Everybody in the world knows how to use a pencil. You may not hold it right, but you know what it's used for. You know how to, how it writes, all of that. But it wasn't one person that created pencil, right? It was a guy that had the lead, a guy that had the wood to go around it to make sure the lead doesn't break, right? It was all these people that put into an idea that then everybody in the world can recognize. And I think that's what we're missing, right? It's that real collective intelligence. And to me, you hear me say it all the time, it's the collective intelligence and the collaborative leadership that are going to bring us to the solutions we need. And right now, I think we are so focused on an individual that we've lost that sight of how much that individual could actually help the people around them. And that's something I think people need to hear more of. And I'm done.
If I could butt in,
Sure, David, the mic is yours.
hold on. I lost you. Clubhouse.
Hi.
Okay. I want to take Matt's analogy and go one step further, because I think the union analogy works to a point until you get to the issue that it's the workers versus the owners. And I think we have to find a way to organize and become a collective, but not in a adversarial way. And in this sense, I think this is a good bridge with the other Consuli group, where we're discussing trust in experimental trials and development, because I don't think unions, at least here in Chicago, really beget trust between the members of the union who were trying to improve working conditions for themselves and in the school system, the resources for the students and so forth, and the city government. It's become a battle political battle between them, and the people that suffer are the ones that we're trying to serve. So I think that model goes a certain distance. But what I see happening is what somebody else mentioned. There are groups that are organizing around a specific illness where they feel there is not adequate or safe therapies that are already in existence and FDA approved, and they are aligning with researchers and clinicians and so forth, and becoming advocates for community-based efforts, and then on up. So it's that bottom-up thing, but we have to find ways that we can all deal on an equal basis rather than in some hierarchical or categorical level. So that's what I wanted to say about that.
Thanks so much. Appreciate that. Gavin, did you want to jump in?
Really quickly, because you and I had discussed DAOs last time, Elizabeth, and I just wanted to highlight what we're describing here is a DAO in a way. It's the workers are the owners. It's a Web3 co-op. And, increasingly, it seems like that's the trajectory that we're moving toward.
Thanks. Matt, I see you came off mute. The mic's yours.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something about unions. So I think that that there are. It is important not to a little hold the metaphor lightly a little bit, because if you just look at all of the sort of concrete facts about the history of unions in the United States over the past 100 years or something, that's overloading the metaphor, right? The point is just that this notion of collective organization, which really can work. And I think that there's a couple sort of points to notice about this form of advocacy that sometimes get lost, particularly in kind of American discourse about it. One is that the sort of, like, on the one hand, there really is, there really are adversarial interests sometimes. Like, so for example, the owners of the mines in West Virginia in 1910 had interests that were adverse to the miners. Like, there's just no way around it. Like, they wanted to pay them as little as possible, as they as little as they could get away with to keep the mines going. Similarly, there really are adverse interests between, like, the people who are participating in the digital ecosystem today and the companies that are exploiting the data. With that said, there are really inspiring models all around the world of collective organization, kind of synthesizing these adverse interests in ways that are much less acrimonious than what has happened in the United States over the past like half century. A good example is like Germany. So in Germany, unions are really powerful, but they work very, very cooperatively with corporations, with capital. Basically, they sit on the boards of directors. They advocate from the inside instead of always from the outside in this adversarial way. And there's just a greater kind of acceptance in the society and throughout the organization of all the institutions of actually the productive role that that kind of organization can play in the overall system. So in other words, it's kind of like, if you zoom in, but to the level of the owners and the workers, there really are adversarial interests, and it's important to sort of understand, just be honest about that. But then if you zoom out one level beyond that and think about the entire society, that's where those adversarial interests actually dissolve, and synthesis between the kind of unionized interests and capital suddenly appear as productive and efficient for the whole of society. So, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Thanks so much, Matt. I want to put on the table a somewhat thorny issue, which comes up often, and it did come up here today, just this whole issue of the de-identified or anonymized data as, and I think, Alice, I'm going to ask you to, I think you made a statement at one of our meetings that, the addiction of anonymized data in the health system, I think I'm attributing that to you. But I want to put that on the table for dialogue here, because, we think about data, and one of the core ways that data is being disenfranchised right now is this sort of de-identified, sort of this anonymity, the anonymity being sort of the cleanser, at least as it's currently, articulated. Love you to speak about that more. And Alice, the mic is yours.
Well, for those following the news, Eric Lander, who resigned, I think a day or two ago, and I don't want to say I blame him, but he's had tremendous amount of resources to design health information flows in the country for the last 2 decades. And the first 10 years at MIT were spent on gene patents. The last 10 years, de-identified data. And de-identified data is, by its nature, severed from the patient. And it provided researchers access to the information with as little responsibility to return any value to the patient. And the tragedy is that we've had massive amounts of government spending generating data the last 2 decades, and very little return to patients and healthcare delivery systems. So, and it was a model. The universities were paid to create the health data, the sequence data, and they had tech transfer agreements that allowed them to then sell that sequence data. And the same people that were designing those systems were consulted for our health information exchanges. So we kind of need to get those that like to have huge de-identified databases under their control as part of their ego or reputation, and just put an end to that. And I think a simple thing where they have to consent human data before they build machine learning and AI systems using genetic data. And then we have a foundation now moving forward for higher quality consented patient data sets that are accountable to those receiving massive government subsidy to run these systems. So
Well,
I'm looking.
I'm glad you brought that up, Alice, because I really think that what we're trying to do with the CBCRN is define a different kind of de-identified data for the purposes of a publicly available data set, with people can analyze it for specific questions and issues that it's rich for. We need to have not only a de-identified database, but a one where um, we've made safeguards so that people cannot be indirectly identified because they live in a specific area where there's very few people of that age
Yeah,
or race and so forth.
I
But
completely disagree with that as well.
since the data is coming from the community, and the clinician investigators and their patients basically have the right to use that data at their level, it is not de-identified, and it can be used within the confines of a specific relationship and a specific research question to explore issues of importance to those patients. And so, de-identifying data, I think, is a bad word only if it is associated solely with the monetization of that data and use for purposes that don't feed back to the suppliers of that data.
You're right. So there's context to these things. In a pandemic, you're going to need de-identified data in many cases to save lives. So, but I love that notion of, as you mentioned, like a local data manufacturing, that there's some attempt to regionalize the data and have the communities providing it participate, and that there would be bidirectional communication, and that we wouldn't. But I just think that it's a shame that 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 the data that the government is paid for to generate in this pandemic is not accessible to help guide patient treatment. Like we should know what mutations of the virus an individual, a long hauler, was exposed to, right? And that the specific mutation should be part of their health record, right? That data is. We can't say we're protecting patients because we make them go through outpatient surgery and come home and mend themselves, right? So the notion that this is a patient safety issue really doesn't have any weight. The problem is that academics love having the data with no responsibility in most cases. So I don't know
Can
how
I
to.
chime in after Alice? Alice, can I add on to your discussion there?
Of course.
So I think for me as a patient, right, I've been talking to different patient communities. And I think one of the things that we have to change is the stigma around illness. You know, people think that they're a burden. They think that their illness is something that's going to keep them down. But I think what we have to realize is this industry is solely employed with people because of these sick people. You know, and we have to give them that recognition as well. And, you know, in the patient communities, when I'm talking to them, they're talking about de-identified data like it's a safety net for them, right? They don't realize that some of this data, even though it is de-identified, you can still be re-identified. You know, there's all of these issues out there that aren't even touched on because, and I think really that stigma around illness is one that we really need to confront. But you know, that's my perspective on the de-identified part of it. I see huge benefits in opening that up to a collaborative and to giving access to people that may not normally be in that place. So I'm Christine, my perspective.
Thanks so much, Christine. Thanks. I appreciate that. And I think that, Julie, I don't know if you can bring Rob to the stage. We see, it seems like we have a raised hand. Yeah, I mean, I raised this de-identified because this is the way that, you know, the world has sort of gotten away from, you know, setting aside the consent issue and setting aside, it seems to me like, you know, regulation, that works when there's real clarity, but this notion that, you know, all the personal choice has done over the course of time is, you know, most of us are just stuck accepting the terms if we want to, you know, use our iPhone or, you know, what have you. So that notion of regulation giving consumers choice. I mean, if we look at what's happened, that has been, you know, quite a challenge. HIPAA, you know, for example, and health information privacy, a lot of change and ultimately uh, a lot of rights were trampled on, you know, as a result of the opportunity to get people to sign privacy consents, which they also then gave away their rights to their data. So de-identified data is sort of, in my mind, one of the thorny issues, particularly in healthcare, but it's a broad issue writ large. And how to deal with that in an effective way certainly doesn't seem like it's going to be dealt with on an individualized basis. We've seen what individualized approaches yield in terms of the results. So just to add my 2 cents here, I'm raising that question because I think it's kind of the Achilles heel of data dignity, actually. And by the way, that de-identified patient data set, or that is got huge value, even if it's a publicly available data set. Figuring out how to properly remunerate patients when there's commercial use feels like it's an important part of what we need to think about as we ultimately achieve data dignity. Did we lose Rob? Or Rob, I see your hand is raised, but I don't know how actually. Julie, are you able to add Rob to the stage?
Hi. So I see, Rob, your hand down at the bottom, but the app is not letting me. It's not functioning properly, perhaps. So working on figuring that out. Rob, if maybe you want to take yourself off and then we'll invite you up and try this again, that'd be great.
And guys, I hate to do this to you, but I am going to hop off. But I do think that this should be a topic that you raise in the clinical trials clubhouse as well. I think it's an important topic and question that really needs to be addressed. And so I would love to see that on the clinical trials one as well. So, but thank you guys for having me. I'm going to hop off and I'm looking forward to hearing how this all ends up.
Oh, thanks so much, Christine. To be continued. Thanks for your
All right.
perspective.
Yep. We'll talk soon. Bye, guys.
Okay, thanks. And we're at that time anyway, and hopefully we get Rob's question. Or Rob, if you want to back channel your comment to Julie, she can bring it on. I'm not sure why the app isn't working, but let's do this. We're at that, closing remarks, as we leave this conversation. What's next? What topic, specifically you think we need to take and dive into deeper for our next session? I'm just going to go in order of how I see you. So apologies if, so I'll just do that. Matt, I'm going to turn the mic to you first, your perspective around closing remarks and the question I asked. The mic's yours.
All right. Yeah. I mean, I think there's obviously just a huge complexity here, but I'm really encouraged to see so many people thinking about this and working on it, and I think that even though I see really big obstacles in terms of basically um, financial interests that are going to be have reason to want to sort of screw this all up, and I think we need help from policymakers who are going to have trouble wrapping their head around what needs to be done in time to do it. So those things really worry me. But I do think that we're moving towards a much broader understanding that some kind of uh, grouping of interests in data needs to happen and needs to become a major part of the ecosystem. And I am happy to see some people thinking about it, and hope we can work together and move the ball forward. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Matt. Appreciate that. Gavin, I'd like to turn the mic to you for your closing comments and remarks. The mic's yours.
Yeah, I heard so many awesome interdisciplinary perspectives, and it's just exciting to be in the space with all these people who are thinking about generally the same thing. And I know the more we hold this, the more people can begin to ask questions, and we can begin to excavate and explore all the different facets. Just like Matt was saying, this is a wildly complex topic, so it's going to require all of us, and just excited to be a part of it, and looking forward to next time we connect. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Gavin. And Alice, I'd love to hear your closing remarks. What's next? The mic is yours.
I'd say I think de-identified data is appropriate in some instances when you have dynamic consent, right? So I'd like to see. The other thing is this, what would happen if all that claims data could not be monetized, right? What impact would that have on there being pressure to start doing patient engagement around data? Simple. There's just some things that there's levers, plenty of levers that we could pull in the future to get some change. And a big one is just liability for the data, and that those holding on to it, maybe just the liability if it caused them to set it free. Right, thanks.
Thanks so much, Alice. Always appreciate your perspective. Parker, your closing remarks. What's next?
Thank you, Elizabeth. I've heard a lot of good things here this afternoon, and I think what's next really is kind of looking at the de-identified data and how that really isn't actually de-identified at the end of the day, and how it can be traced back to the individual person, and how we can work with that and really empower the individual with their own data that way. Really good stuff here today, and that's what I've got. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Parker. So David, same question, your closing remarks and what's next from your perspective. The mic's yours.
I think this whole idea of monetization is really crucial, because from my perspective, the data we're collecting in the CBCRN is not for monetization at all. It's for policy informing and to show that there are ways around uh, basically irrational federal policies that prevent research on certain drugs and medications, um, and that those policies need to be changed, but they have gotten a life of their own and um, have become a business of their own. So those policies have become monetized and are dealt with, therefore, by lobbyists and so forth. So there's an advantage to not taking money from the feds or pharmaceutical companies, but it's also a very difficult uh, road to go on. But if your data is being used to inform policy, to improve healthcare for patients and so forth, then I think the issue of it's being used for purposes beyond the initial collection question become mute. That's all I want to say.
Thanks so much, David. Appreciate that perspective. Spencer, I want to give you an opportunity to also weigh in.
I mean, in my opinion, the biggest next steps that need to happen are this kind of continued collaboration. I think in order to really tackle the true power asymmetry that exists within the data ecosystem, it comes with collaboration, organization, coming up with models that are bigger than the individual. And I think it will come with time, but it also is such a pertinent and pressing issue that it's really important to continue this discussion and also just continue to work on kind of unfolding, unthreading the complexity of this issue. So, yeah, that's my final thought.
Thanks so much, Spencer. Really appreciate it. And we're at the point in our discussion where I would like to thank our panelists and the audience. Obviously, another very thoughtful, diverse discussion with lots of different facets that, every time we have these conversations, I feel like we're learning more and really exploring more of the surface area. So, as a reminder, I'd like to also thank our team. We've been assembling the input and the ideas in the public Miro board. So while it might seem like we're meandering around on a lot of topics, this is ultimately being synthesized and will be helpful. We've certainly used this information, I know, in dialogue with policymakers. And we'll continue to do that as we think about, the potential here. We invite your participation, your contribution, your input. And so I'll leave it at that for now. And then I'm going to turn it over to Julie for closing announcements. But first, like to say thank you to Julie and to Spencer for making this possible. Couldn't do it without them. So thanks so much. The mic's yours, Julie.
Hi, thanks, Elizabeth. And thanks everyone for joining us here today. Another really great conversation. They just keep getting better and better. So for those that joined us, thank you so much. And don't forget, we do have replays here. You can share this. Don't forget to look at our Miro board noted at the top there. And again, in closing, I'm Julie Szmyd, Project Manager at Consuli and host for this room and club. As we wrap, please note, in addition to this room, we also host a long COVID Patients Meet Researchers room, as Christine had mentioned. And we hopefully will touch on some of these subjects in that room as well as our clinical trials room. You can learn more by following our club, Consuli Conversations. Just tap the little greenhouse at the top, give us a follow, check out in our profile there all our upcoming rooms for the next few months. And be sure to check out profiles of everyone here. Give us all a follow, and you'll get pinged into the room that way next time. For any direct questions, comments, feedbacks, suggestions if you'd like to join the panel again, or if you have someone to recommend. We love hearing from you, so feel free to send me a direct email or back channel me here. You can find our socials in my bio as well. Please give us a follow. And for those that joined during our event or after our opening announcements and don't yet know Consuli, broadly, Consuli is a public benefit company with the mission to enable individuals to participate in the data economy. Experts do suggest our individual data is worth $20,000 per year, so we help people take control and choose who gets access to and how their personal health information is used, and if and when desired, get them paid for their data and make medicine better. We do this by operating a marketplace for our members where we become their agent. Our members receive smart-matched, individualized offers from us for opportunities, including to participate in clinical trials and data trials. There is no cost to join our movement, and you can learn more at consuli.net. That's consuli.net. Very much looking forward to our next Clubhouse discussion. We'll leave a little music playing to allow those who want to linger and poke around in bios to do so. And we'll see you next time. Thanks again. So everyone, have a wonderful day.